Professor Mehrotra, I'd just like to tell you about some forthcoming programs at Teen Murti. On the 31st of January, that is tomorrow at 3 o'clock, there is a public lecture by Professor Jayanta Bandyopadhyay on the water future of South Asia, the option for advancing ecological engineering. And then on the 4th of February, again at 3 o'clock, there is a lecture by Professor Partha Ghosh, who is a senior fellow here at Teen Murti, on partition's two phases, instant and long term. And then finally 5th February, 3 o'clock, there is a public lecture by Professor Beena Agarwal of the University of Manchester on governing South Asia's forests. Does women's presence make a difference? And you are all aware of these occasional papers which Teen Murti has been producing. There are 3 CDs. One is Samayik Prakashan, Samaj or Itihas. The other is History and Society series. And the third is Perspectives in Indian Development. And there are some recent papers, Brian P. Caton, writing the history of a colonial institution, the case of the government cattle farm Hisar. Then Pradeep Kumar Datta, Sriniketan's cooperatives, the possibilities and dilemmas of Vishwa Bharati's globality. And in the Samaj Evam Itihas series, Anamika's Hindi case 3, Sahitya Ka Usha Kal. So these are available at about 100 rupees outside. You can have a look. It's a nominal price. So now we have a legendary Indian historian today. He belongs to a generation which engaged itself with the writing of the history of the national movement. He is still to write volume 2 of the history of the Indian National Congress, and we wish him a very long life so that that very important book appears in print soon. Today, Professor S.R. Mehrotra will be speaking on the untold story of Gandhi's greatest friend and benefactor, Dr. Pranjivan Mehta, 1864 to 1932. So, Dr. Mehrotra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm delighted to see so many old, familiar, friendly faces around me. I'm grateful to them. I'm particularly grateful to my respected old friend of more than 60 years, Dr. Trilokinath Chaturvedi, who I know has come here not to listen to me because he knows what I have written, but only to give me moral support. Friends, what I am going to tell you is almost an illustration of what a very famous historian called H.A.L. Fisher. You know, Fisher was not only a scholar, he was also a member of the British cabinet during the First World War, whose outbreak, the centenary, we shall soon be celebrating, and which, as you know, as soon as Gandhi entered the English Channel in 1914, and the First World War was declared, and Gandhi's return to India was postponed by more than 6 months. Now, Fisher was, as I said, not only a great scholar, he was also a man of the world, man of affairs. He once remarked that history, that is life, is the play of the contingent and the unforeseen. What I am going to describe today, to tell you today, is a perfect illustration of the contingent and the unforeseen. I think it should be compulsory for every speaker and every author to tell his audience how he arrived at his subject, and why does he intend wasting the time of his readers and listeners and his own time in talking about him. When I have finished, I would request you to write down on a piece of paper how much you knew about the man about whom I am going to talk. It's an incredible story how he stumbled upon Pranjivan Mehta. In 1963, I undertook to write a history of the Indian National Congress, about which the chairman talked. The 2 volumes published, the third and the last one, 1947, is still to be written. And if I am granted another 2 years, the rest of those 2 years are going to be devoted to writing the second and the last volume of my Congress history. So when I began working, you will not believe it, when I started working on it, the introductory chapter swelled into a whole book of 400, 500 pages. It's called The Emergence of the Indian National Congress. I came to Delhi and was working in the National Archives on the Gokhale papers, which had only recently been made available. They were available only on microfilm. We were not allowed to see the actual papers. I came across a letter of a strange man whose name I have not heard. This is the letter. In those days there was no Xeroxing, so I copied the whole letter. This is a letter only written 28th of August, Port Said. The letter is written when Pranjivan Mehta is returning from Europe to Rangoon, where he was at that time. From Port Said he wrote a letter to Gokhale, whom he had met only a week before in France, in Vichy, where Gokhale was equipoterating. I won't read out the entire letter to you. It's a very long letter, but it's a very audacious letter. And anyone who reads that letter would be struck at what Mehta was telling Gokhale, of all persons. He said, during my recent talks with you in Vichy, we naturally talked about your forthcoming visit to South Africa. Incidentally, the archivist had written only the 28th of August was there. He had written the year 1911. The internal evidence was clear. The year was 1912. 1912 has been written by me because it talks about Gokhale's forthcoming visit to South Africa. And he said, the conversation that I had about your visit to South Africa, we naturally talked about Gandhi, and I had the impression that you had neither studied nor understood Gandhi. Imagine a man telling Gokhale that he had not understood and studied Gokhale. Gokhale that he had not studied Gandhi. While everybody knows that Gandhi had met Gokhale as early as 1896 when he had come to India for 6 months. While going to Madras, had stopped over to Pune and had met Gokhale, and it was a case of love at first sight. They immediately took to each other, and Gokhale will recall this incident later on. In 1901, this is another fact which most people don't know, Gandhi had left South Africa for good, never to return to South Africa to make his career in India. He had been long enough in South Africa. He came and he went and attended the Calcutta Congress in 1901, December, where Gokhale helped him to get a resolution passed on South Africa. And after staying with Gokhale for a month in Calcutta at Gokhale's residence, Gokhale was a member of the Imperial Legislative Council, Gandhi stayed with Gokhale for 1 month. And at the request of P.C. Ray, the great chemist, Gandhi delivered 2 lectures in Calcutta in January 1902. The first lecture was on the 19th of January, and the second lecture was due to be held on the 26th, it was held on the 27th, in which Gandhi recounted his experiences of South Africa. After the first lecture, Bhupendranath Basu moved the vote of thanks, and Gokhale seconded the vote of thanks. And while seconding the vote of thanks, Gokhale recalled how he had met Gandhi for the first time in 1896, and he was at once struck by the man, so soft, so gentle, and yet so firm. Vajradapi kathorani mriduna kusumadapi. And he said since then he has been reading everything that Gandhi says, he has been watching every movement of his. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you Gandhi is made of the stuff of which heroes are made. And he said if this man settles in India as he intends doing in place where he deserves to be at your head, he has told us how this struggle of Indian freedom ought to be conducted. And though he has suffered a lot at the hands of the whites in South Africa, there is not a trace of bitterness in Gandhi. He praised him sky high. The second lecture was to be delivered on the 26th. It was postponed because there was a dinner at a wealthy Bengali's house in Shambazar. Incidentally, I may mention the story is that Gandhi and Tagore met for the first time in 1915. This is not true. Gandhi and Rabindranath met for the first time in 1902, 26th of January in Shambazar at the house of a wealthy Kar family, where after the reception and the Lucy and the Misty, Rabindranath entertained the guests with his patriotic songs. Even Tagore's first letter to Gandhi is not of 1915, it is of 1914. It is available in the golden number of the Indian Opinion, where it is quoted, a part of it is quoted. Now, after the second lecture, Gokhale was that day in the chair. So he did not praise Gandhi from the chair, but after the lecture, while talking privately, intimately to friends, he once again praised Gandhi. And this so much annoyed Gandhi that when he returned home, he quarreled with Gokhale. There is a saying in Gujarati, run away from the place where you are being praised. Praise is like poison. And Gandhi said, I yield to no one in honesty and truthfulness, but I can tell you, your praise of me was most undeserved. I cannot live up to it. And it led to bitterness between the two. Gandhi left the next day for Rangoon. Where was he going? He was going to meet his old friend, Dr. Pran Jeevan Mehta, who is the subject of my talk this evening. Dr. Pran Jeevan Mehta, Gandhi, as you know, this is not a talk about Pran Jeevan or about Gandhi. This is a talk between the friendship between the two, between two Kathiawardis, which forms an important episode in the history of our freedom movement. If you read the autobiography of Gandhi, Story of My Experiments with Truth, Gandhi describes how he arrives in London, staying in that hotel in central London, and in the evening, the first person who comes and sees him in London is Pranajeevan Mehta. You can read the account. I will not try to read it out for you. This is the first meeting between Gandhi and Pranajeevan Mehta. From top to bottom, an Englishman, the felt hat, the kid gloves and everything, and telling Gandhi that we come to London not merely to study and to take a degree, but to know about English ways and manners and all that kind of thing. Very anglicized, very anglicized. Now, Gandhi in his autobiography talks about how Mehta acted as his mentor during the early days that he was in London. But he does not tell us that Mehta was merely a lodger in London. He was a boarder in Brussels. I mean, he was not a student in London. Even my friend who has recently written a book on Gandhi before India, so Guha, Ramchandra Guha, talks about Pranajivan being a fellow student. Pranajivan was not a student in London. He took his Bharat law, but Bharat law in those days meant eating dinners and not being a regular student attending classes. Now, Pranajivan was not a student in London. Pranajivan was a student in Brussels, and this was a fact of great importance, because the Free University of Brussels, the universities in Europe at that time were related to a particular religion. This was a non-denominational university, the Free University of Brussels, where the political, social, intellectual atmosphere was far more liberal and radical than in any university in England, and this left a deep impression on Mehta. Mehta was more familiar with Brussels and Antwerp and Amsterdam and Paris than with London. Pranajivan had arrived in England in 1887. Briefly about his early career, he belonged to a prosperous Jain family which was settled in Morvi. You might have heard the name Wakaner, Morvi, Rajkot. It's now a subdivision of the Rajkot district. He was born at Morvi. His elder brother Reva Shankar, there were 4 brothers. The eldest was Bhai Chand, the second was Popat Bhai, Popat Lal, the third was Reva Shankar, and Pranajivan was the youngest. And as you know, the Gujaratis take the name of their father also, so his name was Pranajivan Das, Jagjivan Das Mehta. Now, Pranajivan Jagjivan Das Mehta studied his elementary education in Morvi, then he went over and studied where? In the same school in which Gandhi was to study later on, though he never met Gandhi. When they were at school, they were for some time together at the school. This was known as the Kathiawad High School, later known as the Alfred High School, today known as Mohandas Gandhi Vidyalaya. Now, Pranajivan elementary education in Morvi. For his secondary education, he goes to Rajkot, and then he went over to Bombay. He must have been a bright student. He got his admission in the Grant Medical College, and he took his LMS, licentiate in medicine and surgery. In 1886, the state of Morvi gave him a scholarship, and he went to Europe. I even know from the newspapers which boat he took in order to go to Europe. So he arrived in Europe in 1887. He was in Europe in 1887 to 1889, during which he took his MD from Brussels and also from the Middle Temple, the Bharat Law. Pranajivan returned earlier than Gandhi. He returned in 1889. Gandhi, as you would know, returned in 1891. Now, though Pranajivan acted as the mentor of Gandhi when he was in London, real intimacy did not develop between them until Gandhi, when he returned from England in 1891 June, he stayed with Mehta at his insistence at his house in Bombay. By that time the family had moved out of Morvi. The elder brother Reva Shankar had a jewellery shop in Bombay, where Pranajivan also settled for some time. He practiced. Then he was the chief medical officer of Dharampur and later on of Eider. And finally, Mehta decided in 1899 to migrate to Burma. So, a doctor, a barrister, and now a diamond merchant in Burma. Now, before he settled, the shop is a strange story. The shop was opened in 1895 with the help of partners. Mehta did not move to Rangoon until 1899. And in 1898, Mehta, while returning from Europe, he was, in those days, though it took about, first time I went to England, it took me 23 days. So, but even then, it's remarkable how people used to travel between England and India in those days so very often. Now, Mehta, while returning from England, came via the old Cape route and spent some time in Durban with Gandhi. In his autobiography, Gandhi says that Mehta visited me. This is the English edition, and that is where one has to be very careful. The Gujarati edition is different. The Gujarati edition says he came to take me away. Why did Mehta want Gandhi to be taken away from Durban? You would recall that Gandhi had come for 6 months in 1896 to India, and when he returned to South Africa, he was very badly treated by the white mob in Durban, because reports had been published of what Gandhi had been saying about the ill treatment of Indians in South Africa. They lynched Gandhi, and Gandhi narrowly escaped death. So Mehta, the Gujarati edition says, he had come to take me away. Mehta wanted Gandhi to join him in Rangoon, where he was himself going to be within a few months. Mehta moved on to Burma in 1899, and very soon he established himself as the most prominent, the richest, and the most representative Indian of his time, taking part in all sorts of intellectual activities, the Hindu Social Club, the Social League, the Sri Ramakrishna Society, all sorts of. And he also published a weekly newspaper called United India, perhaps following the example of Gandhi's Indian opinion. Now, Gandhi comes, as I told you, in 1901. Please do not forget, Gandhi had returned to India to settle here for good, never to go back to South Africa. The man had come, but the hour had not struck. Gandhi had come, but the hour has not struck. Gandhi came, he lived in India for 1 year, tried to settle in Rajkot, and once again at the advice of that old friend Dave, who advised his mother to send Gandhi to England in 1888. At the same advice, he wound up his establishment in Rajkot, went over to Bombay, tried to establish himself in Bombay, and then finally the call came from South Africa, and he went back to South Africa. But before going to South Africa, when Mehta was in Calcutta, after that quarrel with Gokhale's high praise of him and Gandhi quarreling that I can't live up to this most undeserved, Gandhi went to Rangoon and talked with Mehta about his plans for the future. I said he tried to settle in Rajkot, then in Bombay, and finally he went away. Then Mehta and Gokhale did not meet until 1909. This does not mean that they had lost contact with each other, because I have evidence that they had not lost contact with one another. For example, in 1894, Mehta published a small pamphlet called Vivisection, an appeal to my countrymen, of which he sent a copy to Gandhi, which Gandhi led to a friend in South Africa. So I have evidence that they were in contact with each other, but no correspondence exists. Not only the correspondence of these years, the correspondence of later years. This is the great problem in writing about Mehta. Mehta had instructed Gandhi to destroy his letters after reading them. Mehta, when he reached Rangoon, as I told you, became the most representative, the most public-spirited, and the most prominent, and in fact the officials in Burma suspected him of being the medium of bringing to Burma the contagion of the Indian National Congress. So Mehta had instructed Gandhi to destroy his letters after reading them, a great loss for the students of history. We do not have any letter of Mehta to Gandhi or of Gandhi to Mehta until we come to really the First World War. It's tragic, very sad for the historian. Now, Gandhi went away. Mehta stayed on. Burma made a name for himself, as I said, the richest, the most prominent, the most representative Indian. And this marked him out in the eyes of the officials. You might have heard the name of Sir Harcourt Butler. A man from people from UP would know him. He was also, in the central government. Harcourt Butler was the lieutenant governor. He was a clever man. So he knew, despite the fact that he was an arch reactionary himself, and his comments about India and the Indians are worth reading. But Butler was a tactful man. He recognized the representative character of Mehta and appointed him a member of two committees which he appointed in 1917 to look into the grievances of the deck passengers who in thousands visited India to Burma, Burma to India. I don't have with me just now the exact figures of how many Indians were there in Burma, but to just give you an example, 36,000 Gujaratis alone were there in Burma. 36,000 Gujaratis. To give you another example of how Burma was flooded by Indians, there were more Indians in Rangoon than Burmese. The language spoken in the bazaar was Hindustani, not Burmese. What would happen in a country imagine if there are in Delhi people, I will not say non-Delhi walas, but non-Indians, terrible. So one can imagine why later on the anti-Indian feeling grew so strong and sharp in Burma. Now, perhaps I am anticipating events. The most important year in the relationship between Gandhi and Mehta is 1909. The two friends are meeting after 7 long years. I told you they had met in 1902 and they had gone back to South Africa. Then in 1909, whether by accident or by design, they found themselves together at the same time from July to September in Europe, in London. Gandhi in London and Mehta roaming about in Europe. And they stayed in the same hotel, Victoria Street, EC4. They stayed in the Westminster Hotel, in the same hotel, not in the same room, but in the same hotel they spent. And night after night they talked. We have 2 letters of Gandhi to Kallenbach, and we have 3 letters of Gandhi to Pollock, in which he talks about his long chats, Gandhi's long chats with Mehta, and how ultimately he converted him to his views. It's remarkable that the first man to whom Gandhi revealed his newly found philosophy of life, New Welton song, what he called the theory of life. The first person to whom Gandhi revealed his newly found philosophy of life, later on embodied in Hind Swaraj, was Pran Jivan Mehta. The guessing game is still going on. Even when we had the centenary of Hind Swaraj, the great scholar on Hind Swaraj, the known authority on Gandhi, Anthony Parelli, still keeps on talking about Shyamji Krishna Verma or Vinayak Damodar Savarkar being the reader in Hind Swaraj. The reader in Hind Swaraj is nobody else but Pran Jivan Mehta. Gandhi did not disclose this fact until 1940. And that is why this guessing game has gone on for that long. But now the game must cease, because in 1940 Gandhi says very clearly at a meeting of the Gandhi Sarva Seva Sangh in Calcutta, you may not be knowing for whom I wrote Hind Swaraj. I wrote the entire Hind Swaraj for my dear friend Dr. Pran Jivan Mehta. We stayed together in the same hotel for more than a month, where I had these long chats with him. Mehta was an intellectual giant. How could I pit my wits against him? But I placed my point of view before him, and he was converted. Now, the fact is now well established that the reader in Hind Swaraj was Pran Jivan Mehta. Now, as I said, I must tell you how I got deeper and deeper into Pran Jivan Mehta. In 1963, I got that letter of Pran Jivan to Gokhale, telling Gokhale, I have a feeling that you have not studied Gandhi. And do you know what he said in that letter? Gandhi is the greatest political prophet that India has produced during the last 5-6 centuries. And if he had been born in the 18th century, the history of India would have been different. This is what Mehta is telling Gokhale in 1912. Then came the year 2010, and we had the centenary of Sindhu Swaraj. I also had the audacity of writing an introduction to Hindu Swaraj. And lo and behold, what do I discover? I discover once again in Gokhale's Servants of India Society papers a letter of Pranjivan to Gokhale during my last 1909, month of November. During my last visit to Europe, I spent a great deal of time with Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. He is becoming more and more of an ascetic every day, not an ordinary kind of ascetic that we usually see, but a real great Mahatma. I said, that's more than enough for me. I gave up everything. I had too many irons into the fire. I had the Hume volumes. I had the Congress history, as the chairman told you. I said, nothing doing, everything must wait. I must first write about Pranjivan Mehta. The man who calls Gandhi in 1909, please remember, the usual myth is that Tagore called Gandhi a Mahatma for the first time in 1915. As I told you, even the first meeting of Tagore and Gandhi is much earlier. And here is even Tagore's first letter to Gandhi, I know, is written in 1914. You know, every history is well known except perhaps the most recent. Well, I must write about where should I turn. No Mehta papers existed. Gandhi had destroyed, according to Mehta's instructions, most of his letters. Where should I turn to? I did not even know where he was born. One or two descendants of Mehta that I discovered in Bombay did not even know that he was born in Morvi. They did not know it. Until, somebody in Rajkot gave me the address of a man in Bombay. You might have heard his name. He is the great manufacturer of greeting cards, Vakil and Sons, Arun Mehta, Vakil and Sons. So he gave me the address. He is related, to Mehta, a great grandson of his eldest brother, Bhaichand. And Arun Mehta has written about it, how one day a stranger came and the receptionist told me that he wants to meet me, and the first question that he asked me when I met him was, are you related to Pranjivan Mehta? He said, yes, I am, but I don't know anything about it. Terribly difficult job, how to find material on Pranjivan Mehta. But patient, hard labor. Slowly, I thought, even when I thought I will write an article or two saying about how Pranjivan was the reader in Hindu Swaraj and things of that kind. I will even talk about what Gandhi had admitted. Let me read out to you what Gandhi had said about Mehta. I had read, for example, Gandhi had said, I gave you this 1940. I wrote the entire Hindu Swaraj for my dear friend Pranjivan Mehta. Then in 1925, Gandhi says Dr. Mehta is a personality which deserves to be widely known. Gandhi says on Mehta's death, I had no greater friend than Dr. Mehta in this whole world. Then in another letter to Gandhi, after Mehta's death, Gandhi writes to Naran Das, Mehta was not only a pillar of the ashram, without him the ashram would not have come into existence. You would not know the story how when Gandhi returned to India, he had no money. He wanted to get admission according to what he thought was Gokhale's wish in the Servants of India Society. The members of the Servants of India Society unanimously rejected Gandhi's written application for membership, despite the fact that Gokhale wanted him to be admitted. Authority had forsaken the dying Gokhale. He could not assert his will, and he died in 1915, as you know, on the 19th of February, and Gandhi did not know where to turn to. He had no money. And where did he go? He begged to his Alauddin's Chirag lamp. he went to Rangoon. This is Mehta's second visit to Rangoon in 1915. Mehta gave him a great reception. Gandhi's fame had preceded him in India. He came trailing clouds of South African glory, and Mehta said, "Don't worry, you collect as much money as you can from public subscriptions, and whatever else you need, I will give you." It was with that help that Kochrab was established. Then, as you know, the ashram moved to Sabarmati in June 1917. How much money did Mehta give to Gandhi before Jamnalal Bajaj and Birlas came to the front? Difficult to know. Mehta was a secret donor. He had instructed Gandhi not to reveal what he was giving him. But even then, you go on pursuing. I have now evidence that Mehta gave money when Gandhi asked. Mehta gave money anticipating the needs of Gandhi. In all, I would say that Mehta would have given at least 10 lakhs of rupees to Gandhi. And 10 lakhs in those days, you know what it meant. Now, as I said, the most important year in 1909, Mehta, because of his intimate knowledge of Gandhi, is the first Indian to write a book on Gandhi. You remember the first biography of Gandhi is by J.J. Doak, M.K. Gandhi, an Indian patriot in South Africa. The second book, anonymously published is by S.L. Pollock. M.K. Gandhi, a sketch of his life and work, published anonymously, but both published in 1909. In 1911, Mehta is the first Indian to write a biography of Gandhi, M.K. Gandhi and the South African Indian Problem. And there Mehta, you know, the book is a strange book. The title is South African Problem, but it's really not much to do with South Africa and all this. This was a very clever attempt on the part of Mehta. Both, Hind Swaraj, both the Gujarati edition and Indian Home Rule in English had been banned. And this was Mehta's clever way of advertising, popularizing Gandhi's views by other means. You can compare what he writes in his M.K. Gandhi and the South African Indian Problem. Almost verbatim he quotes from Hind Swaraj. It was a clever attempt on the part of Mehta to popularize Gandhi's ideas, to which he had been converted, as I told you, in 1909 when he had studied. Now, before they parted in 1909, this is a very important, as I said, 1909 is the most important year. Before they parted in 1909, so many things had been settled. The first thing that had been settled was Gandhi will give up his legal practice. Who is to support his family, not only his large extended family, Mehta was to support his extended family. Mehta became also a trustee of the Phoenix Trust. Mehta was to support Gandhi and his extended family after he had given up his practice. The second thing that was settled is Gandhi will try to return to India as early as possible, latest by 1911. This was settled in 1909, that Gandhi must return. And henceforth, Gandhi will train in South Africa, not, the Satyagrahis for Satyagraha in South Africa, but he will train in South Africa at Phoenix people whom he has to take to India. Satyagrahis for India. This is what had been settled. Now, Gandhi had obligations not only towards the family that was living with him in South Africa. Would you know that Gandhi had 5 widows in Kathiawar to support? 5 widows in the family. All this Mehta took upon himself to support. And that is how I say he not only encouraged Gandhi to return to India, he enabled Gandhi to return to India. Gandhi wanted to return to India direct from South Africa. He's writing to Gokhale, I have no money, Phoenix is run dry. I want to go and my elder brother Lakshmidas has died and the family wants to see him. But Gokhale insisted, who was then in England, Gokhale insisted that he must come to England. So Gandhi first went to England, and there the First World War, as I told you, broke out as soon as he entered the English Channel. Gandhi was delayed. Gandhi, who at one time loved London, my dear London. Gandhi really loved London when he first left. Dear London. When in June 1891 he is taking leave of London, he says, Dear London. Gandhi, 1914, this is a city of darkness for him. Gandhi's ideas have changed. Gandhi not only got, delayed, Gandhi, as developed phthisis, pleurisy. Gandhi developed pleurisy and he came to India a sick man. While returning at Aden, as the story goes, he gave up his western dress and put on the Kathiawadi dress. So that is how Gandhi and Kasturba in their Kathiawadi dress returned to India. But once again the problem, we have to settle what to do, and there Mehta comes to his help. Now Mehta, as I told you, was suspected. Butler was a clever man, but he was succeeded by a man called Cradock. You might have heard the name of Reginald Cradock, who was the Home Member in the Government of India. So naturally he also dealt with the department that dealt with the so-called Indian revolutionaries in Europe. So Cradock knew that this man Mehta, when he goes to Europe, he stays with a man called S.R. Rana. S.R. Rana was a very famous revolutionary living in Paris, who had married a German wife living in Paris when the war broke out. So S.R. Rana, so he knew of his contacts with the revolutionaries there. Incidentally, I may also mention that it was Mehta who got for Gandhi Tolstoy's famous letter to a Hindu. Tolstoy had written this letter in reply to one Taraknath Das. This letter had been circulating amongst the Indian anarchist revolutionary circles. Mehta got this letter from S.R. Rana, and this letter he told to Gandhi. Gandhi, who had already read a great deal about Tolstoy, who regarded him as his great guru, and I will not go into the Tolstoy affair. It's a strange story of how Mehta himself was very heavily influenced by Tolstoy. Now, another important year in Mehta's life is, as I told you, he's very active in public life now in Burma. In 1918, Reginald Cradock, writing to the Viceroy, says, the most dangerous man here in Rangoon is this strange man who is not only a doctor and a barrister and a jeweler and all that, very strange career, he says, and he is also the publisher of a newspaper. So he marked him out as the man. A notice was served on him to leave Burma in 1918 October. A notice was served on him to leave Burma within 7 days. Probably the only instance in British Indian history when a lieutenant governor did not succeed in deporting a man whom he wanted to deport. The order was never carried out. First, because Mehta was found to be ill at that time. Mehta gave a very spirited rejoinder to this letter in which he said he was even offered that if you give up political public life, then you can stay on in Burma. He said, this is the price I cannot pay. This is the price I cannot pay. Ultimately, who intervened on behalf of Mehta, would you believe it? Edwin Samuel Montagu, the Secretary of State himself. On the advice of Pollock. Pollock was a friend of Montagu, and that is why Pollock wanted the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms to be adopted by the Congress. So, on the advice of Pollock, Montagu intervened because the order had not been carried out because the illness of Mehta delayed and then withdrawn. As I said, the only instance in British Indian history when Tilak could not be saved, Lajpat Rai could not be saved, but Mehta could not be deported. So strong was the reaction both in Burma, in India, and in England against Burma's against Mehta's deportation. In 1919, I'm sorry I've left aside my notes because if I'm pursuing them, I'm looking at my friend Dr. T.N. Chaturvedi, who says, I won't be very long, another 15-20 minutes and I've finished. Now, as I said, Mehta knew about Gandhi so intimately. Will you believe it? All the letters that we have found of later years of Mehta to Gandhi or Gandhi to Mehta are in Gujarati. They all begin Pyara Bhai Mohandas and they become Pyara Bhai Pranjivan and they all end with Pranjivan Sabande Mataram. They are all in Gujarati. Hell of a job. Translation is not an easy thing. Those who have tried it would know it. And translation done from a language in a running hand, terribly difficult job. If my friend, I'm proud to call him my friend, though he was the Chief Justice of Himachal Pradesh, if my Chief Justice T.U. Mehta had not translated those letters, the book would have never been written. In the writing of this book, it appears to me as if some superhuman agency has been helping me. People, as I say in the preface, never perhaps as an author owed so much to so many as I have done in the writing of this book. So many people have helped me in so many ways. The only picture that I had of Mehta when I began writing, I had seen in a Khadi Bhandar in Rajkot, in the Rashtriya Shala, that was a painting of Mehta, Pranjivan Das, Jagjivan Das, Mehta Rangoon Wala. This was the only portrait that I remembered. I must have seen it 40 years ago. A great artist, photographer, Ramesh Thakur, got it, done for me. But now in the book there are 32 photographs of Mehta. 32 photographs of Mehta. I never thought I would be able to write an article of more than an article of 50, 60 pages. I'm now with a book. The memoir itself is about 250 pages. Luckily, Mehta himself has written a great deal. Gandhi called Mehta an intellectual giant. And he also said his books, his writings were his labor of love. If Mehta had not written these things, I would not have known the facts of Mehta's life. If, for example, I tell you that his name was this, he studied here, he studied there and all this, these 10 facts are not there to be found in some book, in some chapter. These 10 facts have been obtained from 10 different sources. Terrible. How I pieced together, these bits of information in order to make a connected story of Mehta is a miracle. I never thought I would be able to do it. But as I said, after you have listened to me, please write down on a piece of paper how much you knew about Mehta before you listened to me and how much you know about him now. More has been written about Gandhi than has been written about any single individual in modern times, isn't it? But about Mehta, not even a 2-page article has ever been written. Not even a 2-page article. How to write a memoir of Mehta, incredible. Mehta is most active during the war, especially during the years 1918-19. In 1919, he is the member of the Congress deputation that goes to England in connection with the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. There is a photograph of him along with Vittal Bhai Patel, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, G.S. Kaparde, B.C. Paul and all that. He is a member of the Congress deputation to England in 1919. 1920, he is still very active. He is the greatest, friend and carrier of the infection of Gandhi and Congress in Burma. So he is a marked man in the eyes of the Burmese government. But 1920, when Mehta is at the height of his career, he suffers a stroke. He had high blood pressure and he had diabetes, but neither of which there was any cure in those days. In 1920, Mehta suffered a stroke. And Gandhi writing to Kallenbach, do you know that Mehta can neither read nor eat with his own hands. He rallied a little, he recovered. His greatest sorrow of his life was that he was very excited when Gandhi launched his non-cooperation movement. He's all the time, he was still writing, dictating letters in which he talks about Gandhi, what he should be demanding. And as early as 1920, he's insisting with Gandhi about two things that I would mention that would interest you. The first is an agitation against the salt laws, 1920. In 1920, he is once again insisting with Gandhi, you must demand the control of the army. Without the control of the army, your independence will mean nothing. He wants him to want Purna Swaraj. In 1920, he is advising. He is still a radical. Now, Gandhi, despite all his great radicalism and all that, is more practical-minded. He knows the situation in India. Mehta, as I said, beneath the height of his career, suffers a stroke. Briefly about what Mehta has written. Mehta's two books are on medical science, on medicine. One is in Gujarati, a fat book of 300 pages, Cholera, Plague and Other Infectious Diseases. He was both an anti-vaccinationist and an anti-vivisectionist. He was both of them. Then Mehta was, his very socially conscious. He established the Social Service League in Burma, which looks after the interests of these thousands of deck passengers that are traveling every week between Burma and India. I told you the number of Indians there, and they were traveling in inhuman conditions, deck passengers. And not until Gandhi traveled himself as a deck passenger in 1915, he knew about what the miseries of these deck passengers. So Mehta kicked up a row about the maltreatment of the Indian laborers who went to. Without the Indian laborer, the Burmese economy could not be sustained. This fact was granted by everybody. But the large influx of Indians into Burma was resented. As I told you, imagine, as I said, more Indians in Rangoon than Burmese. The language spoken in the bazaar is not Burmese, but Hindustani. Now, when these two committees are appointed, Burma is appointed by Harcourt Butler to be a member of both of them. One is the inconveniences, hardships suffered by the deck passengers, and the second is by the compulsory vaccination of these deck passengers as soon as they arrive in Rangoon. You come after 2 or 3 days journey from Calcutta or even a longer journey from South India. And as I told you, the number of Indians so large that 30,000 Gujaratis alone. In fact, there is a picture of Mehta with Gandhi, 1915, 19th of March. It's a strange picture. I have got it somewhere here. Mehta gives a garden party at his house. His shop is in Mughal Street and his house is in Pagoda Street. Beautiful places, Burma. And Mehta gives at his residence in Pagoda Street a garden party in which the entire, all the invitees are in Kathiawadi dress. All the Kathiawadi, everyone, there are about 100 of them. It's easy to recognize Gandhi and Kasturba because they are sitting side by side. But it would be difficult. I would give a prize to anybody who can recognize Mehta in that crowd. So Mehta lingered on despite his illness. How great was the affection between Gandhi and Mehta. Let me read out to you only one small letter of Gandhi to Mehta. This is of 1914. I hope I get it. Yes, I'm sorry, here it is. Bhai Shri Pranajivan. Gandhi has just been released from the Iravada jail. He had the appendicitis operation, was released before his time. Then he goes over to Juhus for convalescing. Bhai Shri Pranajivan, Gandhi is writing to Pranajivan, I thought of you constantly. Hardly a day passed in jail when I did not remember you. Having protested to the government on the issue of my correspondence and stopped writing letters altogether, how could I make an exception in your case and write to you? Today is the 3rd day since my release. there is some strength in my hand, and the very first letter I am writing is to you. As we are both unwell, who should inquire about whom? My health is improving, the wound has not yet healed, the doctor thinks at present it will take about a week and all that. He said, if you can write with your own hand, write or dictate to somebody else. I would like to see you, but it cannot be. Can you come over to India? This is Mehta. I think it's time for me also to close. Mehta lived on until 1932. Strange, a doctor. One day in his library, he's searching for a book with a table lamp in hand. He drops the table lamp, the leg is cut. He ignores his good about his business. He's not only, a jeweler, he's the owner of vast property, urban and rural. So Mehta goes about his business, the wound becomes septic, the leg had to be amputated. Gandhi has a premonition that this is going to be Mehta's last illness, and his premonition proved correct. Mehta died on the 4th of August 1932 in the Rangoon Medical Hospital, Rangoon General Hospital. So that's the end of the story. There is the great lament of Gandhi when Mehta dies. Gandhi is in jail at that time, in which he talks about Mehta, and he talks about his simplicity, his vast wealth, and how he spent a little on himself, and then his charities, and then his growing faith in religion, in ahimsa and all that. During the last many years of his life, so far as I know, Doctor had scrupulously followed truth both in business and legal practice. I know that he had great hatred of falsehood and hypocrisy. His ahimsa was visible on his face and could be read in his eyes. It was becoming deeper day by day. Of course, the Atma in man never dies, but Doctor has become through his virtues immortal in a special sense. His close connection with the ashram was a great help in its religious aspirations. This is the last message of Gandhi, which was sent to the ashram, where it was read out before the inmates. Thank you very much for being so patient with me.